Alright, good evening. For anybody who doesn't know me, I am Wotu Suarez of 826. I'm currently the Squadron Warrant Officer, so if you're watching this 5 years down the line, you don't know who I am, but that's okay. So today we're going to be doing a video on how to care for the entire cadet dress uniform, and I'm hoping this will be helping kids and cadets in my unit for years to come. So we're going to go from the top all the way down to the bottom and go through how to care for all of it. So a couple things we're going to need, right? We're going to need an ironing board. We're going to need an iron, right? We're going to need our uniform. This is obviously just a small piece, but we have other pieces around. So again, you're going to need your uniform. I have some shoe polish here. I also have a polishing cloth and some water, which we're going to need for a few things throughout the lesson. So first up, we have the wedge. So the wedge is your headdress, right? It can be worn. It is optional to wear it in the C5 combat or field training uniform, the greens, right? It is mandatory to wear it in your dress uniform, your blues. And the wedge is definitely the core piece of the uniform for a lot of things, because it's kind of the thing that everybody wears the same, very similar. So the wedge, first things first, never put this in a washing machine. You put this in a washing machine, right, you're going to lose this nice straight form. You're going to get some mangled mess like that, right? And that's not what we want. So first things first, always, if your wedge does get dirty, do not throw it in the washing machine. What you're going to do is you can take a piece of paper towel, soft wet cloth, something like that, wet it a little, and if, say there was a spot of dirt, I could just take my paper towel or my cleaning cloth and just, with a little bit of water, just kind of scrub it out. So, that's the wedge. Pretty simple, all in all, right? Just to clarify, to put it on, right, what I like to do is just keep my hair from sticking out. You want to kind of come in and over, right? And as you can see, right, my hair is a little long right now, but there's no hair sticking out beneath the cap, versus if I put it on like this, you can see there's some hair sticking out beneath my forehead. That's not what we're looking for. So that's the wedge. Let us move on to the undershirt, the blue shirt. So this is the undershirt, or the light blue shirt. People call it different things. So this is worn in ceremonial dress and service dress if you're a senior. And if you're not a senior, then in service dress you're just going to wear this under your tunic. But in all cases, if you're wearing this blue shirt, you're generally wearing this blue t-shirt underneath it. So this isn't terribly impactful, right? It's just a t-shirt, so no need to give this any special ironing or anything like that. Just make sure it's clean, not dirty. The basics, right? So we'll just kind of fold this up, put it off to the side. I'll always take care of your uniform. Make sure it's folded. Don't just throw it in a pile. That's sort of the best advice I can give to you. So we'll just put that over here. And now we're going to move to blue shirt. So this does need to be ironed. And we're going to iron in a couple places. So first of all, we're going to iron these sleeves, right? So we want a nice crease along the sleeve, right, and along the bottom, all right? And then we also want to make sure that our shirt overall is free of wrinkles. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to start our iron. And anytime you iron something, this isn't just for the uniform, you want to find a tag on your clothing that's going to list the material composition. So on this we can see that this shirt is 65% polyester and 35% cotton, right? So what we're going to do, at least on my iron, right, different irons are going to vary, but on my particular iron, I'm not sure how well you can see it, but basically we have a bunch of options here, and I'm going to select polyester because the garment is mostly polyester. So we're going to select polyester, and we're going to let that warm up. And while we let that warm up, right, there's a couple things we can do. We can check to make sure that we have water in our iron, and if we don't, right, mine can use a little top off. If we don't, we can take some of this water that we've got here, and we can top off our iron. And personally, you know, there's no real right way to iron, I find, as long as you get the proper end result. But when I'm ironing, whether it's my uniform or something else, I personally like to use a lot of steam. So that will require a lot of water, obviously, because water and steam are the same thing in a different form. And I'm so terribly sorry, I forgot to grab this earlier, but we're also going to need a little washcloth, and we'll use this later to make sure we don't give our trousers what is known as the shining. If you've ever seen that movie, it's very scary. So, right, obviously never touch your iron. We can see that some of them have a temperature sensor, mine doesn't, so what I like to do is I hold my hand about 1 inch away, and I just kind of feel it, right? Obviously be careful. You don't want to touch this in case it is hot, so I just like to hold my hand a little bit away, and you'll feel the heat coming off it. So when we do go to iron our shirt, let me move closer to you a little bit. And again, be very careful if you're moving a table with an iron on it. So we're going to take our iron, move it off the side. And I like to start, I don't do my creases first, I like to make sure that, that I don't have any wrinkles in it. So this uniform in particular, mine, is fresh out of the dryer, so it's mostly for your wrinkles. But we do have some small ones. So what we're going to do is I'm going to lay it flat on the table. Alright, hopefully you can see it there. I know the image quality probably isn't the best. I apologize for that. So we're going to lay it flat on the table, or as flat as we can get it. Right, kind of stretch it out, make sure there's no pinches in the fabric. Right, so we're just going to do our best to make sure that this is flat as we can get it. Then once our iron is hot, right, I can feel, again, holding my hand away, not touching it. I can feel that this iron is hot. We're going to double check that it's set to polyester so that we don't damage our uniform by accident. Or in some cases, right, you're not going to use enough heat depending on the fabric, but I think our main concern here is not damaging it. So now that our iron is hot, our shirt is nice and flat. What we're going to do is we're going to take our iron and we're just going to go across and across and across. You know, some people like to go in circles. Right, again, it's personal preference as long as you get the job done. There's no, you know, there's no regulation on how to iron your shirt, so to speak, as long as you get the correct end result, which is no wrinkles and creases in the sleeves. So again, we're going to go across, or, you know, as you like. This is how I like to do it. That's how I'll be demonstrating it throughout this video. And across and across and across. And again, make sure you straighten out so you don't get accidental creases where you don't want them. Right, and for me, what I like to do here, this isn't really necessary because it's a thinner shirt, but for the sake of demonstration, right, I like to kind of steam it up a little, if you can see it there. Yeah, I think you can see that in the video. And a tip when ironing, this is going to come in handy for other things in life, not just your uniform, is you never want to hold it in one place. You can see that I'm constantly moving the iron if it's on the shirt. If it's off to the side and I'm doing something else, I put it face up, right? If I have to leave the area, I'm going to unplug it. Because obviously this is hot. If you leave it on any kind of fabric for any length of time, you're going to burn your shirt, burn your ironing table, you know, God forbid, burn down your house even. So always be careful, right? So again, so there's that section of the shirt done, right? The back is now wrinkle free, so carefully, I'm going to kind of move it over so that I can get to the side of the shirt. So again, right, in this case my ironing table is high enough that the shirt does not touch the floor, so please be careful of that. You know, you don't want your shirt on your floor picking up any dust that may or may not be there. So again, I'm going to take this, straighten it out, make sure there are no kind of folds, because if you have folds when you don't want them, what you're going to end up with is creases where you don't want them, and those can be a real pain in the neck to get out. So again, we're going to take this shirt, make sure it's nice and flat, and I like to do this section by section, because I personally have trouble getting it all flat at the same time. So again, we're going to take this little section here, and we're going to flatten it out, iron it, make sure there are no wrinkles. Make sure you get in between the buttons. You can see I'm going kind of back and forth there. That's so I can get in between the buttons, right? Right? And now we're going to go over our pockets. So our pockets, again, same thing. Don't be worried. You can go over the pockets. It's okay. I like to kind of lift them so I can get underneath the folds, and then I go over the folds. Again, just making sure everything is nice and smooth and wrinkle free. So now that we have that, we're going to go to the other side. Again, you know, different ironing boards, different people, different techniques. It's all okay as long as you get the same end result. So we're going to make sure that this is straight, no creases that are able to be created, and we're going to go over it. And again, going along the seams. This side doesn't have any buttons, this side has the eyelets, so it's a little easier. And again, you can see that sometimes areas form where creases are kind of liable to be created, so make sure that you're watching and make sure that you don't accidentally make any creases, because as I said before, if you get creases, it can be pretty hard to get them out. And we don't want creases where we don't want creases, obviously. That's kind of a roundabout way of saying that. So now we've done that, right? So now we've got that, we've done the back. The last thing to do is get these sleeves done. So what I like to do is, I'll show you here a little closer. I like to grab it by the epaulette, which is the place where your rank goes, and I like to kind of drag it down my finger and grab it by the end. And at this point, I like to flatten out the sleeve, and then, sorry, I gotta come back around here, it's a bit convoluted. Once I have that, I can then lay it flat on the table. Make sure that it's nice and flat. And again, once you have the area that you want your crease, be very careful, right? Make sure it's firm, make sure it's not kind of slipping away on you. You can then make your crease. So to make a crease, right, go along with the iron again. Never stay in the same spot for too long. Go along with the iron. And especially for creases, I like to use a lot of steam. And that'll make these creases nice and sharp. You know, we like to say sometimes, my dad used to say to me, sharp enough to cut yourself on. So we're going to go across and across, making sure that crease is very defined. And then we're going to go along the sleeve, make sure that is nice and smooth, wrinkle free. Only place we want the crease is at the top and on the bottom. So again, same thing on the bottom. Going to go to the bottom of the sleeve. Some kind of dirt there. I guess on my iron, it's okay. I'm going to make sure that we have that nice crease on the bottom too, and that crease on the top. So again, as you can see, without me touching it now, I'm not sure how well you can see that on the camera, but we now have that nice sharp crease line. And on the bottom as well. Alright? So next thing is going to be the exact same process on the opposite sleeve. So we're going to take that and lay it out, right? Take your time, make sure that you're going to get your crease in the right spot, because again, it's really a pain to get it out if you put it in the wrong spot. So take your time, make sure your crease section, so to speak, is where you want it. You go across and across and across and across. And again, I like to use a lot of steam. Do as you will. Excuse me. Do as you will. Right? Making sure there's no wrinkles in there. And just ironing out that sleeve. So again, nice, nice, nice. And when you're done your shirt, let's do a final check here. So I can see there's no wrinkles on the back. You can't see this because the camera isn't good enough, but I can. So we're going to make sure there's no wrinkles on the back, right? None on the side, none on that side, right? Looks like I see something here. Oh, no, just trigger the light, I guess. And then we're going to check our shoulders for that crease. Yeah, okay, so we can see that crease is there on that shoulder. It's there on that shoulder. Final thing I like to do, you know, not everybody likes to do that, but I'm kind of a perfectionist. I just like to iron out the collar. Make sure that's not wrinkly if I can help it. So, you know, I go and iron that out, blah, blah, blah. Take this. Now that collar is nice and smooth. And when you're done ironing, what we're going to do is we're going to take our hanger and we're going to put it through the sleeve. Right? I'm sure you all know how to use a hanger. So just nice, hang it up. Don't go to the trouble of ironing this and then, throw it into a pile somewhere, because then, all your hard work is going to go to waste. So, make sure that that top button is done up. I like to do up that top button just so that it stays, secure. We have our shirt here, right? Crease, no wrinkles, and we're just going to hang that up in the closet. And grab our next piece of kit, which is going to be the tunic. So the tunic, I'm sure you all know, is this nice, lovely kind of overcoat jacket, the tunic, right? But yeah, so the tunic is going to be for most dresses when you're in blues. It's going to be kind of the most outward piece of kit. So in that way, it sort of matters the most, because as much as it is important to have your light blue shirt very well ironed and very presentable, in most dresses it's not going to be seen. So the tunic is the same way. Sort of. I shouldn't have said that. Excuse me. So it's similar, but it's not the same. That's what I meant to say. So the tunic should be ironed, but there shouldn't be any creases in it. So how do we do that? So we do the exact same thing, except we make sure that there are no areas where the fabric will fold over itself. So as you can see, I've laid this entire jacket flat on my ironing board, and before we start ironing, we're going to again go to this tag and make sure that we have the right setting. So I can see from the tag here that this is 75% polyester and 25% cotton. So now that we know we're on the right setting, we know that our tunic's flat, right? We're not going to create any creases. We're going to take our iron and same thing, just go back and forth across. I like to use some steam here, right? Make sure there are no wrinkles in the back whatsoever. And again, just going back and forth, really smoothing that out and making sure that we have no wrinkles. So this doesn't take too long, generally, at least in my experience. And again, right, we can see a little fold over form there, so I'm going to straighten that out, go across one more time. So now we're good on the back. Right, now that we've done the back, we can do the sides. So again, same procedure, lay it nice and flat. In my case, I have to make sure that this, you gotta do what you can, right? Sometimes I find it easier to kind of, hang one of the sleeves over this little end point that I have on my particular ironing board. But, as I said, different people, different irons, different ironing boards. You're all gonna have different styles, and that's okay, as long as you make sure that you have no wrinkles. So now we have this kind of flat section here. This is a bit more convoluted with the tunic, I've always found. But again, you can do it in sections, that's okay. You don't have to do it all at once. And again, same thing. Go over your pockets, make sure there are no creases, no wrinkles if you can help it. Right? Go over here. And again, same thing. Fairly simple process. Just making sure we get rid of all those wrinkles. Make sure your pockets are nicely pressed. It's fairly quick. And again, it makes it easier in my experience because this is right out of the dryer, and I find that the dryer tends to remove most of the wrinkles on its own. But quick ironing definitely always goes the extra mile, so to speak. So again, we're just going to iron that out, make sure that we have no wrinkles. Get in between the buttons here because this is the side of the buttons, right? Oh, and we can see it kind of scrunched up on us, so we got to straighten that out. Press those pockets with a bit of steam. Oh, yep, see, gotta be careful. Almost gave myself a nasty scalding there. Always be careful with irons, even when you're experienced. So next up is the sleeves. So the sleeves are a bit more complicated because same thing, we do want these wrinkle-free, but we also don't want creases in them. So how do we do that? So we can't make a crease, and there's a way not to do it. So essentially what we're gonna do is we're gonna lay our sleeve flat on the table. You have to excuse me here. This part I do find takes a bit because I've always found it fairly complicated to get the sleeve nice and flat, but that's kind of the best I can do for now. So what we're going to do, take your sleeve, make it nice and flat, take your iron, and only iron within the confines of the inner sleeve, so to speak. So what I'm not going to do, you'll notice, well, you can't really see, unfortunately, because of the camera position, but what I'm not doing is I am not touching the sides. And if I touch the sides, they're going to fold over into a crease. But as long as I stay within this innermost area of fabric, I will not create a crease. And that's what we're looking for. So again, all the way down, making sure there are no wrinkles, right? No crease. And then we have to rotate it, right? Because if we don't, we can't iron the whole thing and we're gonna form a crease. So we're gonna rotate it. Again, making sure that it's nice and flat. So stretch it out, take your time. And same thing. Iron, iron, iron. Get rid of any creases that may have been there. For example, personally, I am terrible at sewing, so I always use a tailor, or I contract the services of a tailor to get my rank sewn on whenever I've been fortunate enough to be promoted. And for whatever reason, every single tailor I always go to, despite me telling them not to, tells me, insists on ironing creases into my tunic, which is what we don't want. So if you do get a crease in your tunic, right, I just actually got one here because I was being careless. So if we do get a crease in our tunic, what we can do is, again, just flatten it out, make sure it's nice and flat as you can get it, and just iron over that crease. And with any luck and a bit of steam, a bit of time, patience, that crease will come out and you'll be just creaseless. So it is a bit of a pain, but it's certainly not the end of the world, so don't think of it like that. And again, opposite sleeve. So again, make sure that's nice and flat. Take your iron and just go over that area. I like to go in circles with the sleeves. That's a bit easier for me. So, kind of take your iron. I call it like the nose of the iron. It's this little pointy bit up here. Again, obviously I can't touch it because it's hot. And I like to kind of get around the bendy areas, so to speak. So, for example, the bottom of the squadron insignia, the ranks, the little nose, as I like to call it, is very good for getting around there. And again, we're just going to flatten out our sleeve in the other direction. Right, sometimes you have to move the whole garment. That's okay. And get that other side of the sleeve nice and ironed. So we're going to take our time, making sure that's nice and flat, because again, we don't want to create extra work for ourselves by forming creases. That's kind of the worst thing you can do here, because it just, you're wasting your own time. Nobody wants that. I could go, watch Heartland after this. I gotta catch up. But if I create creases, then that's just gonna take longer. So we want to kind of get this done as simply as possible and up to scratch. So again, we're gonna make sure tunic's nice and ironed. I'm gonna make sure that, okay, so we can see we don't have any wrinkles, don't have any creases. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this flat. I'm going to grab my hanger off from the side, and I'm going to put it through the hanger. Make sure it's nice and snug, right? I like to do up the top button, just so I find that helps it to not fall off. Okay, and we're going to put this in the closet. So right here, I have the trousers. But before we get to the trousers, we're going to get some more kind of minor things out of the way. So I have them on the table here behind me. First, what I have is the tie, right? This is an issue tie. And I also have the belt that goes around the tunic. So this is the belt that goes to your pants. This is the belt that goes to your tunic. So both of these things, I like to iron just to go the extra mile. So what I'll do is I'll take this, I'll take the Velcro out, right, and I'll kind of remove the buckle, because obviously the buckle is plastic, and plastic and heat don't mix. Nobody wants a burning belt buckle. I'm sure nobody wants to go to their office, their supply officer, and explain to them that they need a new belt buckle because they melted it with the iron. So with the iron, again, just going along the belt, My belt always seems to form a little crease line in the middle. I'm not sure why that is, but it just happens. So I like to kind of go along this belt, just iron it out, making sure it's nice. And again, sometimes a little bit of steam will speed things up. And we can be fairly sure that this is polyester, even though it doesn't come with a tag, because it's always attached to the tunic. And it feels the same, it looks the same, probably is the same. If it's not the end of the world, but always check if you can. But unfortunately, this one doesn't have a kind of a garment composition tag, if you will. And again, just making sure that belt is as flat as possible. Any wrinkles that may have formed through whatever means, we're going to get rid of those. I'm just going up and down the belt. And when we get up here, I kind of like to speed things up a little because this is where the Velcro is, and I'm not sure why, but I don't like to have an iron on Velcro for too long. I'm not sure if that's a logical fear or whatever, but it's just the thing I don't like to do, so I like to kind of get this out of the way. And again, use a little bit of steam. This isn't as important because, if we have a wrinkle in the belt, it's not terribly noticeable, but it is something that you want to do because, we want to look presentable. And if we want to look 100% presentable, we have to do 100% of the work, and that means kind of doing some of the stuff that might seem silly, like ironing the belt. Right? I understand that this might seem a bit ridiculous, but, if you want to look sharp, you got to get all the little check boxes, so to speak, and that includes ironing your belts. So once we have that all nicely ironed, we're going to take our buckle, and I'm going to feed it back through the buckle. We're going to reattach this as it's meant to be. Okay, now that we have that, we can kind of fold this up nicely, delicately, and we're going to put this off to the side. Same thing with the tie. So a lot of people, and I used to do this when I was younger as well. I'm not immune to it, right? I find a lot of cadets, they tie their tie once and they don't untie it. So that's bad because that will it'll damage the fabric and it'll create wrinkles that can be hard to get out later. So, for example, when I joined see, you gotta be careful. I got lucky there because that was just a momentary touch, but always be careful around irons. So when I joined cadets, what I did was I got my grandfather to tie my tie for me, and I probably left that tie in that knot for, I don't know, a very long time, much longer than I should have. So every night when you get home, untie your tie, fold it up, and put it somewhere secure, and then tie it when you have to leave for cadets next week, right? And again, same thing as we did with the belt that goes for the tunic. We're just going to go along the belt, making sure that it's nice and smooth, because A, that gets rid of any wrinkles and it makes you look much more presentable. And B, personally, I always find that it is significantly easier to tie a tie that is smooth and wrinkleless and flat versus a tie that's covered in all sorts of wrinkles and warps and twists and bends and knots, and it's a real pain. So again, same thing, just going along the length of the tie. Use steam if you have to, but get rid of any creases, get rid of any knots, get rid of any wrinkles, and when you're done, same thing as we did with the belt. Obviously we don't have a buckle to put on here, but kind of fold it, and again, and again. So this is very compact, right? Oh, throw this in a sock drawer, etc., right? Just put it off to the side. So now we have the last item on our list that has to be ironed, and this is the trousers. These are the trousers, I should say. So now that we have these trousers, what we're going to do, put our hanger off to the side. Again, checking that garment tag to make sure that these are in fact polyester. We can see that these are 75% polyester, 25% cotton. Alright, so we know we're on the right setting still. Or at least I do. You may want to check, who knows. And these, especially with trousers, I can never get these on a table correctly. So what I like to do, and it kind of helps me, I still have trouble all the time getting trousers to fit in an iron board properly, is I like to lay them out, folded, right? So kind of lay the legs against each other, get a nice fold, lay them on the table, and again, being careful of the iron. I already got nicked once. We're now going to take one leg and peel it back. And we now have a relatively flat leg, and then we'll get to the top later, but that can be a bit of an issue. So again, we're going to make sure that there are no areas where this is going to crease. And this is where this little washcloth comes in handy. So you can go directly on the trousers if you're careful. However, generally speaking, trousers kind of have a reputation for becoming shiny, right? Some people call it the shining. When you run iron over them. That's not something we want. Now this is the same blend as the tunic. It's 75% polyester and 25% cotton. So you should be fine, right? And in my experience, I'm fine with doing it without a washcloth because, I don't know, it's just, I've never had the results and I have the skill to go fast enough. But if you are unsure, you can always take a washcloth, put the washcloth over your trousers, and simply iron on top of the washcloth, and you'll work just fine. And the risk is significantly less. So you can always do it like this, but just because it's the way I like to do it, I'm going to do it directly on the trousers. And again, this is up to you, but just know that if you do it like this, you do run the risk of making your pants shiny, and that's going to be something you have to explain. So for me, I'm confident that I'm not going to do that, so I'm going to do it without the washcloth. But again, if you're unsure, use caution. So again, same thing, we're going to run along the edge here, and we want the crease opposite to the seam of the pants. So the seam of the pants runs down the side, right? I'm not sure how well you can see here, I'll move in front of the camera. So right, the seam of the pants runs down the pants like this, right? You can see it here on these jeans. The crease on the trousers, we want it to run kind of along the front and along the back. So that's where we want that. So we want that not perpendicular, but opposite the crease, the seam of the pants, if you will. So what I like to do is I like to lay the pants flat with the seam in the middle, and then that way I can iron out the sides, and the crease will be on the sides just where I want it. So we're going to iron out that front crease, and again, so something that you want to look out for when you're ironing anything, but especially your trousers, because it can be very noticeable, is I've always known them to be called the railroad tracks or train tracks, which is basically when you have two creases that are close, but they're not quite exact, so they kind of run off like that or very close, and it doesn't look too good because you have two lines essentially. So we want to be careful about not moving our trousers, and again, that's how we can prevent that kind of railroad track effect, which is just we can do that by not moving the trousers too much. So again, we're going to go across, use plenty of steam if you need to. I certainly like it, right? And when we get to the top, right, we want these creases to run all the way up. So I'm just going to tug them down a little because I'm running out of ironing board here. I'm going to tug them down. Again, make sure that's nice and flat, and run right up to the belt line. So bring that iron all the way up, making sure those creases run right to the top of the pants. So we're going to bring it right up there, and again, back down. So we now have a very nice crease. So same thing on the back. We're going to go to the back, make sure there are no wrinkles, right? And making sure that that crease is very noticeable, very sharp, so to speak, and then it runs all the way up to the top of the pants. So again, we're going to make sure there are no wrinkles. We're going to run along the side. Very well, make sure that crease is very well defined, right? So I always find the back a bit more tricky because I'm not quite sure why, but I've always just found it a bit more difficult to get it right up to the top. So you might need to move your trousers around a little, kind of maneuver them so that you can get that crease where you want it to go. And that's what I've done here. I've kind of moved the other leg of the pants out of the way so that I can go right up to the back of the pants, or to the top of the pants rather. So again, trying to define that crease as best we can. And then again, so I've got my creases very nice, I know that, but I noticed that I have a little wrinkle or a little crease rather, where I don't want one at the bottom of the pants. So I'm just going to try to get that out. And again, being very careful not to touch the iron. Use steam as needed, and just do your best to get that crease, that unwanted crease out. So we have this. We can now check the other side. All right, so the other side looks pretty good, but we have a couple wrinkles. So we'll go ahead and we'll iron out that other side. Make sure that it's nice and flat, and make sure we redefine those creases. So again, just go with steam. Take your time. All right, you want to make sure that that crease is flat because you want to avoid that railroad track thing that I was talking about before. So just make sure that crease is flat along the table. And iron that out. Oh my god, we're already at 35 minutes. We gotta speed this up. We're gonna have an hour-long uniform tutorial here. And when you get to the top, sometimes I like to pull out the pockets just because if you leave them in, you're gonna have like the outline of the pocket in the pants, which is not, I'm not quite certain if that's against the regs or not, but I personally find that it doesn't look nice. So I like to pull the pockets out of the pants just to make sure that we don't get that. And again, run all the way down. We can stuff that pocket back in, move the pants up a bit, and now we can move to the back of the pants. Making sure that that is wrinkle free and that crease is very well defined. Lots of speed. Okay, so this leg of my pants is now good. It's done. So we can now move on to the other side. So same thing. I'm going to lay it flat on the table. It can be a bit convoluted at first, but we're gonna figure it out. Lay it flat on the table. Back it up. Take the leg you just did, pull it back, and expose that unironed pant leg. So now again, lay it flat. You can see here. Take your time. Arrange as needed. And now, oh, see, almost created a crease where I didn't want one there. Make sure you're ready before you start. So now we're good to go. So again, go ahead and iron out that pant leg. Make sure that crease is there where you want it. And if you do experience railroad tracks, just try to go over it again. Like I said, right, we talked in the tunic about getting rid of creases. Just make sure that you have a flat line and really iron it out, and hopefully with a bit of time and luck, you will eventually get rid of that unwanted crease and you will be left with one. So if you do end up with multiple creases or train tracks, just keep it going and you will iron them out. So as you can see, right, I have one line here, it's not moving. And if I did have multiple creases here, I would just keep going along the pant and making sure that it is, that I only have one crease. Okay, so that side is done. We can now move our pants up, right? Flatten out the back there, and same thing on the back. Just making sure that we have a nice strong crease and that we have no wrinkles in the leg. And going all the way up and all the way back. Okay, so this pant leg is now done. We have a nice strong crease. And we can now flip it over to the back. And this side is already fairly good, but you know, we can do a little bit of work here. So that's what we're gonna do, right? Making sure that crease, very nice, very defined, very sharp. Let's get that going. Iron that out. Make sure that crease is well defined. No wrinkles at the top. no wrinkles anywhere. Straighten it out, and let's do the back edge, the trailing edge, if you will. That's a plain joke. Hopefully most of you know what I'm talking about. But we'll go to the trailing edge, so to speak, on the back of the pants here. And I noticed that we have to move. Oh, all right, my cloth fell. Always a risk. Just put that on the table there. And we're going to move the other leg out. Get that crease where we want it, and now that it's where we want it, we can get in there and finish our job. Okay, so now that we have these done, right, we want to fold these in a way that preserves the creases. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the bottom, we're going to grab the creased edge, and we're going to grab the creased edge, take them like this, right, so fold from the bottom, not the top. That's kind of weird for me when I'm talking about my pants, but you know, I usually kind of just throw them over. But we want to align the creases, make sure that they're even with each other. We can then take our hanger and we can run them through the hanger. Make sure it's straight, there's no kind of bends or folds. And we can now take this lovely pair of nice creased and ironed pants, wrinkle free, and we can throw them in the closet. So, the good news is that that's most of the work done. If you've been following along, you are mostly done your uniform. The bad news is that the last part is the hardest, and it's the part that takes the most time. So we're going to unplug our iron, right, because we don't want something that's hot lying around. So we're going to unplug our iron, and I'm going to go put this off to the side where I know that it's not going to interfere with the rest of the work, and I know that it's not going to burn anything. So I have a little table over here which has no flammables on it, and I'm just going to put this down here so it can cool down. So, you know, first things first, anytime you're working with an iron, make sure that you kind of clear the area out. So next up, we have the part you've all been waiting for, I'm sure, how to polish your boots. So I'm going to be using the same ironing board, but because I don't want to get my ironing board all dirty with whatever might be on the sole of my boots, I'm just going to lay that towel down. So here's one, here's the other. So we'll get the boot polishing supplies. So here we have a toothbrush. You're going to see what this is for later. Right? We have our polish, our polishing cloth, and some water. So, what we're going to do first is we're going to remove the laces from the boots. I'm going to take these out. Take these out of the boot. Excuse me, just a second. My computer's making all sorts of noises and I just gotta turn that off. Okay. So now that that's done, we can take the laces out of the boot. We can put this off to the side. So my boots are fairly polished already, so I'm only going to be demonstrating on one. So the other one I'm going to leave kind of intact, if you will. We're not going to take the laces out. So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to take my polishing cloth and I'm just going to give it a quick scrub, remove any dust. Okay, make sure the boot's clean. So I'm just going to start off with, right, if you go on YouTube, you go on the internet, you know, any kind of forum, TV show, ask anybody, you're always going to get a different answer on how to shine your boots or your shoes. So this is the way that I find works for me. There are 1,000 different ways to do these. I've seen ways involving fire. I've seen ways involving hairspray. I've seen a million different ways to shine boots. Many of them are questionable and potentially dangerous. So we're just going to stick to the basic method and the safe method. So I will tell you, you know, anytime you're going to do something weird with shining shoes, obviously be careful. I can't say I recommend anything that involves fire or dangerous chemicals or anything like that, for obvious reasons. But what I will say is, if you're going to do a method that seems harmless, I just don't experiment using boots that aren't yours. So they're my boots, but I don't own them, right? These are issued to me by the cadet program. So if I was going to try some weird wacky method for shiny shoes that I found online, I'm not going to do it on these. I'm going to do it on a pair that I own and I can take responsibility for if I ruin them. So don't use your issued boots to experiment with. That's what I'll just say, and I'll get that out there. So the only thing that we should be using is some polish, a cloth, and some water, right? This is kind of the basic method. So I recommend kiwi polish, right? Some people, just like methods, there's a million different brands out there. There's Kiwi, there's Moneyworth's Best, there's a Saphir if you're fancy. I hear Saphir's good, but it's also very expensive. So I'm just going to be sticking with Kiwi today. And we're going to start with our polishing cloth, right? So we know our boot is clean, so next thing we're going to do is I'm going to take 2 fingers, right? Some people like 1, I like 2. It's personal preference. You're going to take them into your cloth, wrap it, and then I like to make sure that is nice and tight. Kind of hold it like this. That's how I like to hold it. I just like to have a firm grip on my polishing cloth. Again, everybody's different. Experiment with different ways to hold the cloth. 1 finger, 2 fingers is do as you will, and then find something that's comfortable for you. So again, the thing is clean, the boot I mean. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to take some water, right? I have a canteen here, maybe use the bathroom sink, whatever. We're just going to pour some water into a container. I just like to use the lid from the polish container. That's what I just keep my water in, and that's good for me. If you want to use a cup, a little bowl, again, do as you please. So we now have our water, we have a clean boot, and we have our polish. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to wrap our cloth. We're going to take a fair amount of polish, but not a crazy amount. So I just have a little bit there. And I'll move a bit closer so you can see better. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, here, let me see if I can move the camera down so you can all see a bit better. I'm going to get it real close here just so you can see what I'm doing more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this polish, and in a circular motion, I'm going to apply it to the top of the boot. And you might be a bit shocked here because it's not going to shine at first. That's okay, right? For anybody who's never shined a boot before, I personally, I was a bit shocked to see when I first started shining my shoes that this comes on and it doesn't shine instantly. That's okay. So what we're going to do is, as we take that polish and we layer it on, right? Once we get that base layer going, that's what we call this, a base layer, right? So you put that first layer on dry. Once you have your base layer, you're going to come over to your water, you're going to dip your cloth in the water, and you're going to kind of just wet it a little, right? There's a reason this is called a spit shine, because people used to spit on their boot, right? Some people still do that. I wouldn't recommend it because that gives your shoes what we call boot cancer. And boot cancer, here, let's see if I have any on mine here. There's a couple different ways to get it, but it's essentially, I have some here, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it, but it's essentially when you get this kind of pitting in the side of the polish. There's some right there, I'm not sure if you can see it in the camera, but the polish starts to develop these holes in it and pitting, and it's really hard to get rid of, and a lot of times you have to remove all the polish and start from scratch. So that's something we want to avoid. So I don't recommend you spit on your boots. I recommend you use water because there's no corrosive properties to that. So the other thing is, right, just in about 30 seconds, my boots are already fairly shiny. And that's not something that you're going to see if you have a fresh pair of boots. And the reason for that is, when you have a fresh pair of boots, there's no polish underneath it, there's no foundation, so to speak, right? You can't build a house without a foundation. My house, or my boots, right, they already have the foundation on them, so I'm kind of just doing a touch-up here. This is going to take time. It's not something that you can do in 5 minutes. It's something that you're going to have to take at least an hour to do. And the unfortunate fact is that you just have to sit here and apply polish. And then you add a little bit of water, and you come back, and you keep rubbing it in, and you keep going in circles, right? Some people like to go really fast. Some people like to go fairly slow, right? Find your own speed. Again, don't tire yourself out. But yeah, the unfortunate fact is it takes time, takes discipline. takes practice, right? Practice to form, right? But again, just circular motions, steady, right? When you start to stop seeing that, we're going to take some polish, right? Again, get some of that, put it on. Once it's applied, a little bit of water, and come back, right? And that's just what you have to do. That's the process. It's going to take hours, days, years to get a good shine, right? So it's something that you achieve over time. It's not something that happens in one night. Of course, if you really go at it, you can get it in one night, and that's very impressive, but realistically, I don't think anybody's expecting a cadet who just got their uniform to have a mirror shine on their boots the week after they've been issued their boots, right? So again, slow or fast, however you please, just circular motions. And then what I like to do is I bring the boot up to my mouth, and I just I like to kind of use some breath, and I feel that the heat from your breath, along with the moisture, it kind of warms up the polish, and it makes it a little easier to work with. So again, when I'm doing this, I'll take a little bit of polish, and I can see that I still have some water on my boot here, so I don't need to add any more water. But I do like to breathe on it, and I feel that helps me. So that's kind of my method. But again, there's a million and one different ways to shine boots. But at the core of it is, it's trial and error, and it's time, right? So this isn't something that's going to happen overnight. This is just time. So, right, we can see here, I'm just about finished here. That is my boot, right? I'm a senior cadet, so if I was inspecting, if I was inspecting one of my cadets, I would consider that an acceptable boot. But again, I'm not expecting that from someone who just got their uniform. But that's just the toe. So the areas we want to focus on, it's going to be the toe, it's going to be the heel. So right now, I've just done the toe. But what we're going to do is now we can go along to the side, and we can pay some special attention to the side of the boot, right? And we can again rub that in. And I can see I'm running a little low on water. I don't see any droplets. So I'm going to come back, reintroduce some water, right? I can breathe on it a little. That's just something I like to do. You don't have to do that. Again, find what works for you. That's just my method. But we can get some water in there, a bit of hot breath to kind of melt it a little, add some heat, right? And then we've got our toe, right? So again, I'm just doing this very briefly because I don't want this to be a 3-hour long video, because I'm not going to stand here polishing my boots on camera for 3 hours, because I don't think anybody wants to see that. But again, just briefly, there's the side of the toe, right? As you get more experience, you're going to be able to speed up. So right now, right, we're doing the front. Going to get that polish on there, get a little bit of water, and reintroduce the water. And again, breathe on it a bit. Let's grab that in. There's the front, right? The side is pretty good. I'm looking at it right now. So now the heel. Same thing. Go for the heel, put it on. It's a little light on the polish, so I'm going to get a little more. Put your polish on there. And once you have it, you get a little bit of water. Get your water in there, right? Keep doing this, right? It's going to take time. Again, as I said, I have so many coats on these pair of boots that I can't count it. So again, just scrub that polish in, right? So again, that's kind of what you have to do for the entire boot. It's going to take time, but that's the same basic principle. So we want the whole boot done, the whole upper, just like that, right? So again, polish everywhere. So I'm going to do the rest of this off camera because I don't think, as I said, anybody wants to see me sit here for 3 hours polishing a boot. But I am going to cover the other areas that you need to know. So next up, once you've finished polishing your upper boot, because that is what's most important, is we want them polished. Well, we want them clean first of all, but we want them polished. So we're going to take a very liberal amount of polish, really get it on that cloth, and we're going to go to the sole, right? For anybody who doesn't know, the sole is this bottom part that comes in contact with the ground. We're going to take our very hefty amount of polish and rub it into that sole. This is going to blacken the sole. It's going to restore that kind of deep black color that might have been diluted by any dust or water or stains over the years, turned into from a black to kind of a light brown. So we want to restore that deep black color. And we're just going to rub it in. And you don't need to go in circles. You really just need to apply this on as a blackener. So again, very liberal amount of polish. Come back on these soles and apply. Don't be shy with this. With the With most of the boot, you want to use a fairly conservative amount of polish, I find. I find that less is more when it comes to actually getting a shine. But when it comes to restoring this kind of deep black that you see in the sole, that you want in the sole, that's when you want to get, don't be shy with your polish, really layer it on there. You can't really have too much. So just again, restoring that black kind of color. So we want that on there, and we're gonna go around the whole sole. And I just did this last night, so I don't need too much. But someone who, it's been a while, it's gonna be a bit longer of a process. So next up, we have the toothbrush. All right, so what we're gonna do with the toothbrush, make sure this is an old toothbrush, obviously. I have a dedicated one for my boots. I couldn't find it, so I just went out and bought a new one. But I recommend you have a dedicated toothbrush for this, because you're not gonna want to stick this in your mouth afterwards. Trust me. We're gonna come to this little, so you can see here between the boot, between the leather and the sole, we have these little stitches that kind of combines the sole together. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our toothbrush, we're gonna get in there with the toothbrush, and we're gonna clean out any dirt that may collect within those little stitches, right? So that's kind of a problem area I've always found. So we want to get rid of that. So that's what we're gonna do. Get in there, a little more water. You don't want to put any polish in here. I mean, I guess you could. I've never done it personally. I can't tell you what would happen. Don't recommend it. So there you go. Get in there the whole way along and clean out those boots. Right, so just clean out those stitches. Being careful not to smudge your polish. If you do, you can always go back and just redo it. No big problem. But again, so this is what I would consider a parade ready. Well, no, it's not parade ready because I haven't done the sides, but once you do the sides, this will be a parade ready boot. So we've polished the top, or at least I've demonstrated how you polish the top, right? Again, I'm going to do the rest of this off camera. But you polish the top, blacken the sole, and clean the stitches. So now for the laces. So these, in cadets, we do what's called a straight lace. So if you don't know how to do a straight lace, or what it is, a straight lace, it's going to go across, 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 not up, diagonal, 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 diagonal. So we want it straight, hence the name straight laced. So what we're going to do, again, let me get in so you can see a bit more here, is we're going to take our laces, both ends, and we're going to pull it through the bottom. So each eyelet on the bottom, put it through. Having a bit of trouble here. Because normally I do this with it facing towards me, but I'm facing away from me for the video. So, and then we're going to pull it through. So, pick a lace. In this case, it's going to be my right. So we're going to pick a lace. And again, I've chosen the right. And with this one, we're going to skip the next hole. And we're going to go into the hole following the immediate hole. So the second hole up. We're going to go and pull that through. So you can see here, we have, this hole has a lace in it, this hole does not, this hole does. So we've skipped an eyelet. With the other lace, we are not going to skip the eyelet. We are going to go into the hole directly following the one on the bottom. So now we have these two laces, right? This one has skipped the hole, this one has not. With the one that has not skipped, what you're going to do, you're going to go across and from the outside into that hole that you skipped initially. We're going to pull that up, right? With the one that you did skip, same thing. You're going to go across and into the one that's level with that and across into the next hole. From now on, with both laces, you're always going to skip a hole. So skip, through, and across. Same thing, skip, in, and across, right? And just do that until you get to the top. So skip, and across, and skip. Oh, no, screwed up there. You always want to make sure that you go underneath any following laces. You don't want it on top, so go underneath, skip, out, across, and up. Okay, so you have now straight laced your boots. Tighten up. Get in there, make sure all your laces are nice and tight, just like you want them. You don't want your boot falling off. A loose boot Personally, I find it very uncomfortable. Not a fan. Tighten that boot. Okay, so now you've shined your boot, blackened the sole, scrubbed the insides of the stitches, and straight laced it. So, we've now completed our parade boots. And that's it. So I know it looks very simple on camera, but it is going to take much longer to shine your parades in real life, especially if you're just starting out. You know, certainly a 30-second kind of finish is better than nothing, but it really does take time. So that's you can't get discouraged, and I promise you that with time and proper technique, if you do what I was doing, which is circular motion, polish, a little bit of water, and a little bit of heat from your breath, you will get shiny with time. But it's not something that happens instantly. So take an hour, take half an hour, sit down in front of the TV or your computer, watch a movie, whatever, and just sit down and polish your boots, and it will come with time. So, congratulations. We went over the whole uniform from the wedge, the tunic, the blue shirt, the pants, the trousers, and the boots. Now we have one last thing, and that is the belt. Almost forgot about this. So the belt, there's no special care here, right? Some people, you may wish to take some brass cleaner and kind of scrub the top, make it shine, right? Mine isn't dirty. I don't have any need for that. So, but what we do have, let me move the sounding board out of the way. We want what is known as brass on brass. So you'll notice here that if I was to put this belt on just loosely, and I have the front kind of just at the end, if I put this belt on, we're going to put it through, and I'm going to tighten it, and the end is all the way out here. This is not what we want. So what we're going to do, what we want is for this brass here to just poke out of this piece here. So that's what we call brass on brass. So you can see here that when it's worn properly, the brass connects. So how do we do that? On the bottom here, there's a tab. This tab says solid brass, right? You're gonna open up that tab, right? I've always found this a bit difficult, so sometimes I get a key or a screw or whatever. Here, you know what? I have my keys over here. So what I like to do is I take a key and I stick it in that tab and I just kind of wedge it up. Now that I have that, I slide this piece along the belt. So again, right, put it on as you would. You don't have to run it through the pants, but kind of hold it loosely so that the brass lines up and just move that through to figure out where it is, right? So for me, that's about right there. So as you can see, I'm kind of just loosely holding it over, right? Put it through if you want, and just kind of slide it back and forth, figure out where that fits on you. And when you find it, just close up that clasp. So for me, it's right about there. You can see that's on fairly tightly. I might need to tighten it a little, but you can see that that's right there, and I have brass on brass, and it's meeting. So that's about it. It's pretty simple. It can be a bit tedious, but as you can see, this link, this couple piece is now a bit farther down the line, and that's what we're looking for. So now it meets with brass on brass. So that should be the whole uniform. Again, from the wedge all the way down to the boots. I admit I forgot about the belt, and we just kind of had to throw that in at the end. But again, I have been Warrant Officer Suarez of 826. If you don't know me, you know me through this. If you do know me, you know who I am and all that. So I hope this video has helped me. I hope this video has helped you with your uniform. And if you do have questions, you can always contact me, or if I'm not around anymore and you're watching this video in the distant future, you can always contact whoever is in charge of 826 at the time, or your wherever that may be. So I hope this video taught you a lot about the uniform, and I thank you for watching. I hope you all have a pleasant day, and good luck with your uniform care.